Clive Lewis, MP, has said that he would give up his seat for Andy Burnham to run in order to challenge Keir Starmer to the leadership. Ailbhe, what's going on there? Clive Lewis is a sort of regular critic of the government, isn't he?
Antagonist.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wouldn't describe it that way, but yeah, he's sort of he's on the left of the soft left, and definitely not on the ministerial ranks or anything. So to be super clear, he is not giving up his seat for Andy Burnham to stand.
Yeah.
He would say that this was a hypothetical question. I think basically what he means is, if hypothetically there were a way of giving Andy Burnham a seat in Parliament, he would like to facilitate that and would love to see him back. Basically, the subtext being the Labour Party is in big trouble and I want Andy Burnham to return. Does that mean that an MP in Norwich, should trigger a by-election in the hope of Andy Burnham coming back into Parliament? No, because Clive Lewis is not stupid. He knows that the odds that Andy Burnham would actually end up being the Labour MP for that seat are quite low. Firstly, because it's not Clive Lewis's decision to make. It's his Labour, it's his local party members, and then it's up to the voters. So they would get to pick the Labour candidate, and the Labour NEC would have a role in that. Would both allow Andy Burnham to be the candidate? I think it's unlikely. Certainly, maybe the party members would love that. It doesn't seem likely that the Labour NEC would allow that to happen.
That's the National Executive Committee that decides the rules of these things.
The ruling body that's sort of aligned with the Labour leadership, would they let Andy Burnham be the MP for there? I think that's looking really unlikely. I'm sure Clive Lewis would say that himself. Separately, would Andy Burnham, who has made his big thing being King of the North, really want to go and stand in Norwich? So for various reasons, I think it's not a literal plan. It's just an indication within the confines of what you can say as a Labour MP on the record. That's just a very clear indication from him that he would love to see Andy Burnham back in Parliament. He's pretty unhappy with how things are going.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone who knows a lot about what's going on in the Labour Party, and they were saying that they think that this was him trying to smoke out other MPs who have seats that are more suitable for this route to Andy Burnham getting back into Parliament, to then offer up their seats. So a kind of domino effect of like, well, I'll go, no, I'll go. And that was kind of the idea of it, to try and smoke out some other people.
And then no one did.
But absolutely, because there is, Andrew Gwynn, there's been some speculation for a while as to whether he might resign and trigger a by-election. There's also Jim McMahon, who's a minister, but might quite like to be the Mayor of Greater Manchester if there was a vacancy. There are people, and I'm sure there are others, but those are just two that come to mind. There are people who maybe could be in a position to trigger a by-election in a way that Andy Burnham might be able to stand in a more plausible way. But even then, it's been made pretty clear that the Labour NEC would probably try to block Burnham standing. So it might never happen, but I think it was just a very interesting moment.
Yeah.
It also happened just before PMQs. And, if you're thinking about signalling, which is sort of what Ailbhe's saying, it's sort of signalling his criticism with the current Labour leadership and signalling his desire to get Andy Burnham back into Parliament, and you put that out just before Keir Starmer faces Kay Badenoch at PMQs, the week ahead of the budget, the week after that very strange briefing war with Wes Streeting. It's just a reminder that, Prime Minister, you might think that these criticisms and these rumblings have gone away. Let me just remind you and the country that they very much haven't.
Yeah.
But also, the day before, Andy Burnham himself is suddenly back on the airwaves in the national conversation because he's giving a big speech, basically at time of recording.
Yes.
A big speech about his growth plan from Manchester. You're not allowed to call it an alternative budget. But he's making kind of big economic case, but he's also been on the broadcast round today. You mentioned it earlier, Anoosh, on the Today programme, basically criticising Shabana Mahmood's asylum plans and not ruling out standing for Labour leader.